Excellent.
And he was going to get on with Rose River. I asked him to put his application together.
Can you hear it, Mike?
But
Good afternoon from Grants Pass. Check 1, 2. This is the podium mic. Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check.
Joel, hey, how are you? Good.
I see dots. I think you hear us. Excellent. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the September 16th, 2024 Grants Pass City Council Workshop. We are going to get started today interviewing candidates for our Urban Area Planning Commission. And our first candidate is Glenn Arneson. Are you Glenn?
Yes.
Please step forward here to the podium. Is that light on at the bottom of the mic?
Test, test.
Thank you. So we have two positions open for the UAPC, and two candidates we're interviewing today. And Glenn, thank you for being here with us this morning. Can you please describe the role of the Planning Commission and that of a commissioner?
Describe which?
The role of the Planning Commission and that of a commissioner?
Well, I would believe that Planning Commission's primary, their primary thing is to figure out what belongs where in the county or the city, wherever they're at, what it's appropriate to build, what isn't appropriate to build, what's under the code, what's not under the code, evaluate all those things and make a decision on letting someone go forward with the project or not.
Thank you. And what specific skills would you bring to the Planning Commission?
Well, the best thing I have is for the past 40 years, I've been a general contractor. I've gone before probably 60 planning commissions on CUPs for car washes in different places in the western United States. Dealt with making presentations to the planning commission, city councils, for why the car wash was appropriate. Didn't win them all, won some. My construction background, I've been in front of this commission, not this present one, but with several projects I've done in Grants Pass in the past, back in the late 80s, 90s. I built quite a few things here. So I have a pretty good, I've been, besides a little 11-year hiatus I took to Las Vegas to play golf, I've been a resident here since 1981.
Should the planning code always be followed?
That's a good question. I believe that it should be followed because that's what people buy property underneath what the code is. Now, does the code need to be changed or not changed? That's something that needs to be discussed, but I don't think that you can, I don't think you can make exceptions maybe to the code if the code is not properly, if it's not the right thing for the area for what someone's asking to do, then probably there can be an exception. But I think other than that, the code should pretty well be followed because that's what everybody's expected to live by, whether they like it or not.
Please describe your experience with land use and municipal planning and how your experience is relevant to the role of the Planning Commission.
I'm sorry, that echoed a little bit.
Please describe your experience. Some of this you've already covered. Please describe your experience with land use and municipal planning and how your experience is relevant to the role of the Planning Commission.
Well, I believe I have a pretty good, being a contractor for the last 50 years and all in San Diego all the way up to here. I believe I have a pretty good idea of what properties would qualify to do something and not qualify to do something. What would be appropriate to put somewhere and not appropriate to put somewhere. And looking at the neighboring properties and what effect it would have on them. Is it detrimental to them, or is it an advantage, or is it neutral? But if someone comes in with something that's going to diversely affect another property that really isn't by the code or iffy, I think it should be looked at, and the person that's being affected should be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Describe how you would use the city's codes and other information to balance the rights of a property owner versus those of a neighbor or groups of people if you find they're in conflict on an application.
How would I'm sorry, that was a long question.
It was a long question. How would you balance the rights of the property owner versus those of the neighbors?
Oh, okay, so we basically kind of just went through that. If the property owners have a legitimate, even though the code may say so, if the property owners have a legitimate reason, it should be considered. Then it should be considered as a code right. But if the person that bought the property, on the other hand, bought it knowing what the code was and this is what they wanted to do, then should the other property owners be able to stop it? I don't think that's necessarily true.
Thank you. Councilors, do you have any follow-up questions? Rick?
Thank you, Glenn, for applying. The Planning Commission meets twice a month. Would you have difficulty meeting those meetings because it's important to always have quorums?
Partner, it's not.
The Planning Commission meets twice a month. Would you have difficulty going to being?
No, I'm semi-retired. I pretty much can be anywhere, anytime.
Okay, thank you.
I'm very available, let's put it that way.
And Rob over here?
Yeah, thanks for applying. It's pretty clear that you have a lot of insight and experience in this realm. Probably understand a lot of the nuances that I might not understand. With all the experience that you have, especially in Grants Pass, did you ever feel that, what did you feel could be improved? Did you ever feel that you walked away with something wasn't fair or something should be changed or some part of the process? Do you have any thoughts about
I think in the past, to be honest, I've had very good success with the Planning Commission in the past, based on the fact that I gave them common sense reasons why something could be rezoned and make more sense, and it was accepted well. I think haven't had a bad experience here, so I have to say I think they've looked at things pretty fairly all the way along.
Thank you. And Joel is over here.
Yeah, again, I'd like to also thank you for applying, and I appreciate your expertise. What is your relationship to the future development in Grants Pass, and how do you feel about it?
To future development, my relationship, I've probably developed as much here as I'm ever going to develop. I'm probably more looking at as a long-term citizen here of what would make the city better, what would be the better projects and the better things to do that would improve the community and not just go the other way. I'm really looking at trying to give my expertise into looking at projects that you take with a common sense standard, not just, well, I don't like that. You know, it's got to be something where, does it make sense? Is it good? Is it good for the community? Then it should be done, as long as it meets the criteria.
Any further questions? Not today. Thank you for being here and for applying. This is a big commitment. We will be making the decision at a future date, and we'll send you a letter either way, letting you know whether or not you've been selected for the position.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Have
you
a good
very
day.
much. Have a good afternoon. All right, and our second interview today is going to be online, or on the phone, I guess. Nathan, can you hear us?
Good morning.
Okay, thank you. We have Nathan Siebel on the phone. And Nathan, I will ask you several questions, and then the council may have some follow-up questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for your patience, by the way. I had some things come up at work that didn't allow me to actually be there.
No problem. Can you please describe the role of the Planning Commission and that of a commissioner?
Well, I think the role of the Planning Commission is multifaceted, you know, to look at the best possible ways to encourage and foster growth in the city that, you know, has a mind towards transportation planning and safety and appropriate density and appropriate types of development, you know, in the zoning it belongs, so that there's, you know, separation of certain activities like industrial activities with you know, residential development, and that transportation is efficient and also safe. You know, I think there's also a nexus to park and recreation facilities and trails and those sorts of things. And of course, economic development, something that encourages, you know, encourages investment and economic development in the community, and things that serve businesses well and consumers well to access those businesses. So I think it's a multifaceted look at the community at large that promotes growth and good living areas and good business areas and good recreation areas, and how they all fit together. And of course, you know, overall takes public safety into consideration.
Thank you. And can you please describe your experience with land use and municipal planning, or how your experience is relevant to the role of the Planning Commission?
Sure. Well, currently I'm responsible for the state park properties in Southern Oregon, and that includes all the state-owned recreation properties that are in Josephine and Jackson counties. And, you know, that involves planning and master planning, on, you know, what activities we're going to allow where. It involves transportation planning, how to move people in and out of areas safely, and of course, public use. And so all the aspects of public use I have to take into consideration when working with these public properties that I manage. For example, you know, we deal with the issues of unhoused, and, you know, how that affects other activities and other development that's going on in these facilities. Public safety is a major part of that, you know, being able to have access and facilitate a way for emergency vehicles and emergency response to be able to get to these areas where we manage these, you know, overnight facilities. And also in general, taking into account environmental concerns. You know, we're very concerned about water quality, very concerned about soil conservation, forest health, and those types of things, which is also another nexus to urban planning for sure. I used to be the chair of the Public Advisory Commission, Public Safety Advisory Commission for the city of Forest Grove. I was on that committee for 4 years. I was the chair for 2 years. And we worked very closely with the planning committee and planning department of the city, as well as police and fire on development in the city. And so things like response times for police and fire to areas that were where development was being proposed. Transportation planning, including foot traffic and bicycle traffic, and you know, where to put sidewalks and where to put bike lanes, and also transportation and planning around schools and the types of businesses that should or shouldn't be around schools. In fact, I was the chair of that committee when the marijuana ballot measure was passed. I can't remember the number of it right now, but where the cities had to determine whether or not what types of marijuana activities, whether it was retail sales or manufacturing that they would allow in the city and where they would allow it, and proximity to schools and those types of things. So I had that experience up there with the city of Forest Grove, in addition to what I do here.
Thank you. And what specific skills would you bring to the Planning Commission? What is the most important skill for a planning commissioner to have?
Well, I think being able to, you know, understand the restraints of laws and code, and you know, work together as a committee to you know, come up to the best decision possible for the community. Being able to negotiate and work with all types of people, take into account all the different factors and opinions that may be in the room, and just in general being able to arrive at decisions in a way that's hopefully a win-win. I did want to mention too, since I've lived here, I have had experience with development, not super extensively, but we have developed a duplex and a triplex, and we currently have about a half acre in the city limits that I'm working on potentially putting in some sort of development there. So I've had to work, you know, with the city on that, so I'm pretty familiar with the ins and outs of you know, working with the city on developing as well, and trying to understand the restraints and opportunities around the middle housing code that is now what we're dealing with. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you. Should planning code always be followed?
I think in general, yes, unless there's some extenuating circumstance that would require an exception or an exemption.
Okay. And please describe how you would use the city's codes or other information to balance the rights of a property owner versus those of a neighbor or groups of people or other groups of people if you find they are in conflict on an application.
Well, proper notification, I think, is, you know, one of the first things that comes to mind. I know that, you know, if somebody is looking to develop their property and it's all within code, making sure that the neighbors have ability to weigh in on what's going on and comment on it. You know, I think where there's opportunity for conflict resolution, providing that opportunity, whether that requires additional public input or private meetings to see if there's some way to resolve it and at least come to some agreement or acceptance, in the least acceptance on all parties, that what's happening is legal and the right thing for the community and the development that's going in.
Thank you. Councilors, do you have follow-up questions? Rick?
Nathan, thank you for applying. As you know, the Planning Commission meets twice a month. Would that schedule present any difficulty for you?
I don't think so. Those are typically it's Wednesday nights, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that would not be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have a question? All right. Well, thank you for being here with us today, Nathan. We will be making a decision at a future date, and then we will get back to you one way or another and let you know whether or not you have been appointed to the commission. And I very much appreciate you taking your time today as well as applying for the committee.
Sure. You bet. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. All right, council. we will come back at that at a future date. Next up, does anybody have anything on UAPC before we move on? No. Valerie?
Yeah, I just have a question as to when we will make the decision. I mean, is it on a Wednesday night meeting?
Check the agenda here real quick.
Oh,
Yeah,
it is on.
it is on Wednesday
It's
nights.
on Wednesday nights. Okay, I just wondered.
Meeting.
Okay, because you kind of left it open. I wasn't sure it was there. Thank you.
Yeah, I just didn't have the date in front of me. It is Wednesday night. Okay, next up on the agenda is Caveman Pool. It looks like Josh Hopkins is here to present for us.
Good afternoon, Council. Josh Hopkins, Park Superintendent, here today to begin or continue the discussion regarding how to proceed with the Caveman Pool. For subject and summary, it is a continuation of the City Council's discussion on how to proceed with the Caveman Pool project. It's related to our infrastructure City Council goal for maintaining and operating and expanding our infrastructure to meet the community needs by appropriately maintaining and/or replacing an existing capital asset. For the background, on July 25th, 2024, City Council received a request City staff received a request from Council to review what a $6.5 million target facility would look like, and we brought that forth to you guys on August 5th. The request outlined to replace the current pool, just the vessel, add a splash pad, slide, and diving board with minimal improvements to the rest of the facility, and not do the expanded parking lot. On August 5th, 2024, Council held a workshop to discuss the new design option. Council requested further changes to the amenities to the design, which included increasing the height for the dive platform, adding a zero-depth entry with splay features incorporated in, extending the shallow end play opportunities, and more information on the mechanical room upgrades and potential solar heating options. So with that, our design team with Robertson Sherwood Architects, RSA, reviewed it, created an updated scope, and essentially looking at all the stuff we were looking to incorporate, plus our target budget, they identified a 4-lane, 25-yard swim area for lap swimming, a pool depth ranging from 3.6 to 10.6, which allowed for various diving options requested, fiberglass flume slide, dedicated splashdown zone, approximately 6 feet deep, and then a beach entry zero depth with interactive play elements and toys like that sloping into 3.6 feet. They included a 3-meter dive tower. The previous one that we looked at was a 2-meter, but a 3-meter would be allowable at this depth, which raised the height. And then a 3/4 dive board. And the pool would be constructed of shotcrete with a plaster finish. One thing that the city will need to look at in future dates is what type of continual maintenance costs we're going to be looking at with the plaster finish. They're kind of designed to always have water in the vessel, so we're going to need to some level, figure out a way to operate the pool to where it's just at a stage of constant chemical balance, even during the winter months when we're closed, if we go with this option. And then the existing bathhouse was to remain the same. Pool equipment will be replaced. This option is assuming an electric heat pump system to provide the pool heating. When looking at the solar options, they really can't come up with much of a cost until we kind of know what we're going to be building. As we've mentioned previously, once we're out of phase 1, we'll be working with Energy Trust to kind of come up with what those options would be. The extent of the renovations to the bathhouse is kind of unknown at this point. It is a rough estimate and includes allowances for some upgrades to the locker rooms, restrooms, and remove some of the accessibility barriers, and then some of the improvements to the staff transition areas as well as finished improvements. No new parking lot, and it is assumed that most of the pool decking will need to be replaced to accommodate the new pool's piping, plumbing, and everything along those lines. And we'll be keeping the fence and the perimeter exactly the same, so we won't be moving on to the school district property. As far as the preliminary rough budget for this project, essentially they took the 6.5, broke it down, and at the end of the day, came up to where with a 20% soft cost for like contingency built-in type of a thing, it was about $319,000 left over. This is a very rough cost. They do stress the importance to note that This estimate should be considered a rough order of magnitude since we have not done thorough designs of what the renovations would be needed to the bathhouse to properly accommodate the new pool equipment. That would be the mechanical room and those things to make sure it actually functions, as well as the new pool equipment address issues such as accessibility or improvements. We did create kind of a allowance of $120 a square foot, which came from the previous estimate that we had for that type of work. But we're not really sure at this stage what that full cost of the bathhouse, even if we're making minimal improvements, is going to be, because we may have to adjust things to make new equipment fit in there. And then a couple other things to note through the comments is that with interactive water play features, the $300,000 for that, that's just an allowance. The scope is to be determined. Essentially, if we add more, it's going to increase the cost type of a thing around there, so we're not really sure how many play features we're going to be looking at. And then there is a future expense for potentially doing a subsurface drain system just to keep the groundwater lower than our construction grade from the pool based off our stormwater manual. Any changes to the depth of the pool requires more of a change in how we do our subsurface grading for drainage. Here is the site plan, just to give everyone an idea what this current pool facility will look like in relation to the current pool. You can see the outline of the existing basin. This is a smaller overall pool than what we currently have, but it does incorporate the play features that were requested by council. And you can see it stays within the perimeter of our current pool, so we don't need any sort of new agreements with the school district for it. Going over the layout plan, the 10-foot-8 depth accommodates a 3-meter dive platform, but it does not accommodate any future high dive. That would require a 13-foot depth, which again changes the order of magnitude for our scope. Additionally, with the 4 lanes, we did have the option to add 6 lanes, so we could add the 2 lanes back in. And on the previous slide there, it was listed as about over a $500,000 expense increase to add those other lanes back in. We did review the previous correspondence with the YMCA regarding the high dive, and they did not recommend one due to the high risk of spinal injuries, as well as other issues surrounding lifeguard training for deep water recovery and things along those lines. And it is a very narrow feature for our target demographic age groups for those areas. The zero depth entry area, you can see there's circles there. That's where the water play features would be. At this point, it looks like we've got 3 of them. We could increase that or decrease that as needed. We do have a pool surface area at 34 square feet. That's, about 1,500 square feet less than what we currently have for pool surface area. We did check with them. The occupancy based off of this would be about 240 people a day or at any given time. So this does still accommodate quite a bit of users based off of even having a smaller footprint. The 4 swim lanes is to accommodate recreational swimming. It wouldn't be really applicable for any sort of competitive swimming. And, just a note, swim season is over during the summer months that this pool would be operating. As far as our current resources go, we have the $1.2 million out of ARPA, as well as $5 million from the URA, or 18% depending on the consultant's recommendation. And then LB 6393 has $127,422 left, which gives us about $6.3 million total to go towards this project. The rough order magnitude comes in at $6.1 million, so it would be covered based off of our current allocations. Unless we decided to add more features, change the results, and then there's always the big caveat of this is a rough order of magnitude. We do definitely have a potential to move forward on this project and have the cost come back much higher. So with that, call to actions at council discretion with alternatives of move to council action or consent or an additional workshop.
Thanks, Josh. Council, what questions do you have? Rick?
Thank you, Josh. I was wondering if you could go back one slide to the cost. On the URA, $5 million, how is that, just if you could explain how that's computed?
So in previous discussions, council allocated $5 million of the URA allocations to go towards the Caveman Pool. with discussions from the consultant, they did make a recommendation of public facility projects only receiving like 15% or 18% of that based off of what the water treatment plant was receiving.
So if we're looking at, I would say, an updated cost, wouldn't it be closer to 1.2 million from, at the 18%?
Yeah, if we were to move it down to the 18%. When we presented this last time, council didn't really give a direction one way or the other how they wanted to proceed with that URA recommendation, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Joel?
I don't know if you have the expertise to answer this, but what's the risk of funding it from the URA at greater than 18%?
That would probably best be a question for our finance director.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So what is the risk at having the URA have $4 million over the 18% of the project cost come from the URA? What's the risk?
Well, I don't think there's a risk in the sense that that is the amount allotted in the amended plan. There is a potential that you could get into, what's the word I'm looking for? The consistency between public projects.
Okay, so like, for example, on the water treatment plant or the sewer treatment plant, we had 18%, and on the swimming pool, we have 80%.
You have a dollar amount based on the amended plan. The
Right.
other two, you decided to do 18%, which was a square footage of the URA in comparison to the rest of the city.
So then the URA would be, yeah, so the URA then would be covering that geographical area, and their taxes would be covering 80% of the pool costs.
Based on that math, that would be pretty close.
Other questions? Rob?
Josh, can you point out on this layout where the zero depth entry part is?
So the zero depth entry part, you can see, do I have a laser pointer? The zero depth entry part is at the bottom of the stage. You see where the three circles are?
Right.
That's where the zero depth entry comes in. So as far as that layout goes, your zero depth entry is facing the bathhouse towards where the doors are. And, you know, you have this large open space here for, you know, site furnishings and things like that, which is another feature that isn't included in this bid package that we'd have to purchase at some other date. But the zero depth entry is down at the bottom there with the three circles coming in. Then you've got a separation wall between the swim lanes and where the drop-in for the water slide is as well. Essentially with this layout, when you're just doing shallow end activities, the zero depth and the water slide and part of the deep end for the swim lanes all acts as that shallow end, and then it dives down deeper for the lap swim to accommodate the high dives and things, or the dive platform.
Thank you. And the vertical lines that are near the slide, is that steps or what is that?
Yeah, those would be steps for entrance and exiting the slide region.
Okay, thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah, I haven't been here for a couple of these, so I'm going to just ask. I'm a little bit confused, the high dive. You were saying that the Y does not want the high dive. Is that different than what we have, or?
So this is a dive platform.
Okay.
With the dive platform, they weren't really stoked about the idea, but it is less of a dangerous option for
Than the high
spinal
dive.
injury than the high dive.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then I'm a little confused, go back to the URA, the funding slide. So I guess I'm saying that right now we've committed 5 million from the URA. And what is the 18% of that come to?
It comes out to a little over 1.1 million.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? DJ?
Yeah, regarding that dive platform, is in more or less the increased amenities for this pool, is this going to require more management from a lifeguard standpoint or FTE standpoint, given that we're going to be adding amenities to the pool?
Yeah, it will require more lifeguards. The dive platform itself isn't something that's specifically does require more lifeguards, but having the lifeguards plus the water slide and things like that, the wife's been aware that they need to staff up more for the pool. And with the dive platform, it's the type of thing that, you know, they are going to probably have to station guards specifically in that area during the pool use, which will close down that area. And, you know, they'll figure out the way to kind of operate it best. Most time you do it as a cycle, you know, 30 minutes the water slide's open, but the rest of the pool's open for swimmers, and then you switch it back and forth type of thing.
Thank you.
Rick?
Josh, can you go back to slide 5? So in that, if we're trying to cut down or minimize the expense that we're putting into the pool, when I look at that, even the initial subtotal is 4.3 million. There's really, when I look at that, very few opportunities to reduce the cost. Okay, just want to make sure I'm understanding that. We can. All right, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Early on there's a slide that talks about scope, and it talks about construction of the pool will be shotcrete with a plaster finish, and then you discussed how we're going to need to figure out maintenance around that and what that looks like. How does that maintenance differ from the pool's current construction, and why don't we already have an idea of what that will be?
So for the pool's current construction, it doesn't have plaster. It is concrete vessel that gets resealed periodically and repainted. With the plaster construction, it would be a different way to put it to sleep. Essentially, right now, when the Caveman Pool is empty, we drain the pool, do some repairs as we can on what areas are needing repaired during the off-season and beginning of startup. And, you know, we don't need to be down there running water into the pool or running chemicals into the pool to keep it balanced. As we move over to this style with the shotcrete and the plaster itself is designed to be underwater. So we will need to keep water in the Caveman Pool, as well as figure out where we need to go with OHA to put the pool to sleep, but keep it at whatever level we need to. So we're still going to have now a yearly cost for keeping water in the pool, which, you know, should be less than what we have now because the water should stay in the pool. And then as well as chemical usage and things like that to make sure that it doesn't turn into like a swamp out there. So it's just a different style than what it currently is. And, you know, we've had this for less than a week. We got it on Friday. So that's why we haven't pushed it out there to come up with a whole new maintenance plan for shutting down the pool.
Okay, is there opportunity to, because I'm trying to figure out, it sounds like the plaster finish needs more maintenance and may cost more money. Is there an option to not have a plaster finish and just have a concrete finish like we have now?
We could, but then we'd be, you know, kind of in the same situation. The plaster is a little bit more durable, and normally when you do these types of pools these days, you do it with the plaster finish. As far as long-term maintenance goes, every, you know, 3 to 5 years, we have to reseal the pool, repaint the pool, and those all come at a cost. The plaster lasts longer, so it just provides for more long-term longevity of the pool vessel itself.
Okay, and then I had a question about the site plan slide. I was just curious, it seems like the pool itself is pretty far away from the bathhouse, a lot farther than the current pool is, and I was wondering if there was a reason it was so far away, or if that's just kind of where they just plopped it down.
So the reason is we're trying to use as much of the existing depth of the current deep end of the pool to be able to save money on the demo and excavation required.
Very good, thank you.
All right, we have hands stacking up. It's going to be Rob, then Joel, then Rick.
So, Josh, when you say that, you know, we've got to figure out what to, how to put the pool to sleep in the winter and so forth, This plaster construction is not unique to Grants Pass, right?
No, that's just something we just haven't had a chance to look into.
Okay, so
can
we
get a
don't have to
plan.
figure it out. It's been figured out. We just have to implement whatever it's going to take.
Yeah, we'll
that
just
other
need to look
people
into
do.
the options.
Right, thank you.
Joel?
So I was wondering, in your dealings with the Y, my understanding is it's typically a break-even operation now. They don't make money on administrating the pool. And we're putting in a smaller pool. It may have more amenities, it may not, depending on what we decide. With the amenities, it would require some more expense. And then with the deeper pool and the high dive, it would require more expensive liability insurance. Did you have any feeling from the Y as whether they're willing to incur those expenses on a yearly basis to operate the pool?
No, so at this point, you know, we got this plan back on the 13th, or maybe it was Wednesday. But we haven't had a chance to really follow up to the Y to see what they think about shortening the pool or anything like that. Our expectation is the Y is going to be as much of a partner as they've always been and step up to the plate to help us out. I mean,
So you would expect them then to cover those extra operating costs, the liability insurance and the extra lifeguards?
so that all kind of gets worked into our fee structure in general when they currently are operating the YMCA pool or the Caveman Pool. At the end of the year, they pull those costs out of the revenue that came in, and then we split the excess. So they still get their net back. Last year, they were running good, so you know there was some to come back. We won't know until about December of this year when we get the final books back what this year looked like. So, you know, on their end, though, they're more excited to be able to program other things at a new facility that has more amenities to potentially draw people in.
Yeah, so essentially then we're betting on that the amenities would draw additional use even though the pool's smaller to
Correct.
pay for those increased costs.
Rick?
Josh, you mentioned during the winter, of course, the pool would have to be full with plaster, with water, and that it would have to be maintained with chemicals. Is a concrete pool, you implied that it could be emptied and just left dry? Is that so? What would be the potential cost savings, a ballpark?
I don't know at this point if it's that much of a decrease to leave it as concrete or to not add the plaster. We only looked at the plaster option just because it's an option that provides more of a long-term maintenance and repair for the pool itself. And then, you know, when it comes, the reason you want it underwater is just to keep it from getting weathered and exposed to the elements. So the issue with just leaving it as concrete is the more frequent need to go back in, keep it dry so that we're able to get in there to reseal it and repaint it.
Okay, thank you.
Dwayne?
Is this pool at $6 million not going to have an automatic fill and automatic discharge for overfilling?
I'm not sure exactly.
Well, you keep saying maintenance in the wintertime, and I'm just like, I have a pool and you should have an automatic fill and an automatic discharge. So it's a little confusing for me going, at $6 million, you should have a fill and automatic discharge in the wintertime that for overfilling. So,
we currently have those systems.
and you keep a pool full at a gun night because it will pop up if you don't keep it full. So that's why you keep it full. So if you don't keep it full, the pool can lift out of a gun night pool. So, and the chemicals are really less in the wintertime because it's so damn cold, it does not burn chemicals. So all of these questions are not really great questions, sorry.
Valerie?
Well, and to add to that, because we also keep ours full in the wintertime, there's very little chemical. And actually, if you cover it, which most people who have it pool and water open, and I would think to a certain extent for safety reasons, that you would put some sort of a cover over the top so that people aren't prone to want to jump in. And in that case, very little water evaporates too. But yeah, I don't know if it has, I don't have an automatic one, but I've never had any problem.
So I will point out there's a difference between residential pools and public pools to the point to where OHA requires us to go down to these facilities to do water testing and chemical balancing and things like that. So really our concern from a park side is we're going to need to be shifting staff priorities to be able to maintain this facility in a semi-year-round status because of the extra water and everything like that, to make sure that we're meeting our public health standards. But we do already have systems in place for filling and automating that. That's not the side that we're really concerned about. It's more the staff side, as well as, you know, just this new ongoing cost.
Do you know, in terms of staffing, do you know how many staff the YMCA uses now for lifeguards, and how many would be required with this design?
No.
Okay. Any further questions? Brian?
In the middle of that diagram, there's a little white section. Is that kind of like a bulkhead where there's just like a wall there, so there's separation between those sections?
Yeah, it's to kind of protect from a steep grade going down from that slide side.
Okay, and then that section where the slide empties into, that section is essentially roped off to swimmers because of people coming down the slide. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Valerie?
Yeah, I just have a question, and this is whether anybody has been in contact with the school district in terms of whether they wanted to. I mean, I guess it's their own property. They can just choose to put extra parking if they wanted to. It's just we're staying correct on our piece of property, and that's how this has come forward. Am I correct?
Yeah, we did, of course, meet with the school district. It's probably been a year and a half now, when we were at the initial design stages, and that's when we talked to them about the potential for the parking lot expansion. But due to the, you know, kind of the fluid nature of the design, other than them, you know, kind of just being kept at a high level informed, this is still under discussions at City Council. There haven't been any other feedback, including updating on this one, to tell them that there may not be any parking. So we would certainly go talk to the school district as soon as we have some direction.
Rob?
So I'm not sure, it's a question, I guess, for Josh or for any counselor that might be able to answer it. Is the 4 lanes for lap swimming, what makes us believe that that's going to be sufficient for the demand? I mean, I really don't know. I don't swim at that pool. I don't really know.
We were designing a pool to meet the number that council provided
Price.
that they were willing to spend. Now, currently it's got 6 lanes.
Right.
If all 6 lanes are being used, then the 4 creates kind of that issue, but those are things that can be programmed around.
Okay. I'm just trying to, I guess in my mind, you know, consider whether or not it'd be a reasonable value to spend the extra for the 6 lanes. But again, I don't really know what kind of demand there is for lap swimming at that location.
Brian?
I go down, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year and lap swim, so I don't have like a very good gauge, but I have like a little bit of a gauge, and it's usually pretty minimal. So if 4 lanes filled up, it would be a very busy day.
Any other questions at the time? No? All right, I think we're ready for council discussion. Anybody have thoughts they want to share? Brian?
I think we've come a long way on this project, from 13 million down to 6.5. We asked staff to hit this target. They've brought us a project that does meet this target, and it's not everything we hoped and dreamed, but it's got a lot of it in there. And so, you know, I don't think we're going to be able to refine it much more than this, and this has been dragging on for a long time, so I'm more or less ready to move forward with the current design.
Rob?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I know that this summer, one of my daughter's families, the grandkids are now 5, 3, and 1. They went to the pool a couple times this year and really liked it. And I know for sure that this new pool, as depicted, they'd be there every day in the summer. I mean, they absolutely would. I mean, they're very active. These kids are really active. The slide, the zero entry would be great for the young one. There's no doubt that this would be a real draw for them. And if we had to consider increased usage as part of the budgeting, I know for that one small sample, that particular family, there's no doubt that they'll get 10 times the use out of that family. They probably get a season pass for sure. So I really like what we've got here. It's for practical purposes, I think it's 98% of what we wanted. And at a price at this point is half of what we were possibly going to consider just a few months ago. So I'm ready to move forward on this. I think it's be a great asset for a lot of years to come.
Joel?
So I have two issues in terms of moving forward. One is I think the platform dive is a ill-informed investment. I know it's some people would use it, but it's a very limited segment of our population, and it comes at a increased operating cost of a lifeguard and liability, and also construction costs. My worst outcome of that would be we went ahead and paid for it, and then we'd rope it off because the Y couldn't staff it. Or the other worst outcome is somebody gets paralyzed. I look at the other pools around Southern Oregon. I don't see that amenity. So I don't support that. The other thing that I wonder about is having just the urban renewal area pay for it, and the way we fund it, and at a way that is different from the way we fund other public facilities. I don't think that just that segment of the community should be paying for this. And so I would support putting it up for a vote, much like Ashland did, much like Medford did, and not have it part of the urban renewal agency where just because we don't need to have approval, we have just a certain segment of our community pay for the majority of it, more than their share in terms of who uses it. So I have those two concerns moving forward.
DJ?
Sure. I had reserve about the dive platform, but since we don't have to excavate a deeper pool to do it, and it's just a feature that can be added on, I don't have qualms with it anymore. You know, if it's there, we can figure out how to manage it. I'm no longer have cold feet about that. So as far as this design goes, I'm ready to rock and roll. Now, as far as the urban renewal area expenditure, how I have come to be comfortable with spending this money on this pool is it was 4 years ago that council had a strong favor for expanding the urban renewal agency and allocating $5 million to the Caveman Pool. This direction has been demonstrated for many, many years, right? And anybody paying attention to the urban renewal agency knows that. There's been a category, there's been intent, there's been plenty of opportunity to talk and figure about whether or not we want to do this. This momentum is in place, this category is here, this $5 million is allocated to spend on the pool, and I'm comfortable with it, so I'm ready to move forward.
Valerie?
Yeah, I'm going to agree. First of all, you know, our dreams of a $13 million pool are unrealistic. We are not Medford. We don't have the sort of public funding that they do. A lot of the money is coming from the airport, increasing the parking fees and that sort of thing. We don't have a resource like that to help. So in terms of the $5 million, I kind of agree, like, as to what DJ said. You know, we've been talking about that $5 million for years. I mean, that's just always been a commitment that we made and brought it in. So I think to suddenly turn on that one, I don't believe in. And I also look at it in terms of economic development. I have watched many young families come into this community and leave because we don't have amenities for them. And I think if we're going to draw in young families, and I think that's important that we do that we have amenities for them, for their children. We live in a river town. I will say kids need to swim. As far as the diving board, you know, probably shouldn't say this, but we have a diving board in our pool, and that is the most popular thing in the world. And so there is a you know, a big sort of people that will use it, yes, it will take more staffing, but I will tell you that it is a very popular feature in a pool. And so I'm in favor of having it. So I say rock and roll.
All right, any further discussion today? All right, well, it sounds to me like we have council support with moving forward with this plan, so I think the next step is to get the contract going, right, before the end of the year? All right, Joel?
So at some point in time, we need to move forward with a vote, don't we?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion on that one? Okay. Next up, agenda review. So we have a meeting this Wednesday. Fairly short agenda here. We have a resolution that would adopt a supplemental budget, a resolution to award funds for the fall 2024 cycle of sustainable tourism grant program, a resolution that would amend our time, place, and manner locations, a resolution that for the URA that would adopt a supplemental budget for the Urban Renewal Agency, and appoint some members potentially to the Urban Area Planning Commission. And then our next workshop will be September 30th. On that one, we have a discussion about our urban renewal projects and funding, as well as the ARPA allocations to finish that out for the year, and Owl Lot Plaza downtown. And that is what we have coming up for the rest of the month. Does anybody have questions, comments? Brian?
I just had a question about Wednesday because the agenda has a resolution adopting time, place, and manner, but I don't see it in the packet. Oh, is it consent? Okay, never mind.
Anything else? General. I will note, I guess, before you get started, so we're working with the Home Builders Association to identify future topics. So we don't have a topic for them right now. Go ahead, DJ.
Sure, that's a topic I actually wanted to bring up. So Home Builders Association has been aware for months that they've had a slated 9:30 meeting with council. And I'll just remind everybody that through strategic planning and council will, that was supposed to happen every 2 months. The last presentation that we had with home builders was in March. So we are far and away from our dedicated timeline to every 2 months with the Home Builders Association. So it was in the last rendition of the September future agenda that Home Builders Association were no longer on the September 30th agenda. It is a serious misunderstanding to say that we, as the Home Builders Association, were not ready and did not have a topic primed for the September 30th meeting. In fact, the Home Builders Association was surprised as of this morning to find out that that meeting wasn't happening anymore. So I need to continue to advocate, if you want meaningful change in the development community to solve our housing crisis, you have a group of people that are willing to have conversations with council to help move things forward, if you will. So we're far and away from our every 2 month meeting with Home Builders Association, and as of right now, we don't have a date slated for a meeting with them.
What is the topic that HBA is interested in discussing with the council? You don't know? Okay, well, I've never been told of one, and staff is not aware of one, to the best of my knowledge, so that's why why we moved it off. We need to have a discussion topic on the agenda.
Sure, I'm going to respond to that. So there has been for years now a list of topics that staff is acutely aware of topics that have been preliminarily discussed and, to my knowledge, are all right for conversation from staff's perspective and the Home Builders Association. So to say that there hasn't been a topic decided yet is it's a grave misunderstanding of the process that has happened heretofore with the topics that the Home Builders Association and staff has decided to talk about.
Aaron.
Yeah, I appreciate both conversations because I think there's both are right, what the mayor is saying and what Councilor Fraser is saying. The Home Builders Association and the city usually try to coordinate topics to come forward. The mayor did ask in our last agenda setting meeting, do we have a topic? I mentioned that we did not have a topic at the time. I know that we've reached out to the Home Builders Association, and Brad might have some more information. So I think from a standpoint of, yes, we do need to have those meetings. And so staff has reached out to make sure we try to keep those meetings on a scheduled date. But I can also appreciate both sides where the mayor's like, well, we don't have a topic. So there were some other things that I think were put on there on the September 30th meeting as the Home Builders Association. And with that, I just want Brad to maybe talk about how we've outreach to the Home Builders Association.
Sure. So to date, Justin Gerlis and Gail Atkins, I've asked on several different occasions, who do you want us to talk to? I've been told a few times those are the two. So that's the emails, the conversations that we have at staff. I had sent in early September. We nailed down the date in July, so we confirmed the September 30. And then, as Councilor Fraser said, we do have a tracker, which I think Council has seen on several different occasions, that identifies those 19 to 22 different topic areas and the status of those. I sent that in early September, and so said kind of, okay, here's what, from a staff perspective, we see item 3, number 5A, number 7, number 12, and number 14. Which is the planter strips, the duplexes, the UGB zoning, the minimum density, and the SDC fees as the main topics that are outstanding. We can prepare to work on any of those, but as Aaron said, we have in the past been trying to accommodate HBA and which ones they would prefer to see move ahead. So at this point, we just have not received what their priority is. So we can choose one. And just proceed. That's certainly an option, but at this point we haven't received what those preferences are for HBA.
Yeah, so I'm going to recommend, again, happy to put something on the council agenda if it's appropriate, and we just need to know what the topic is that needs to be discussed so that staff and potentially HBA can work together to prepare for that. Anything further for agenda review today? DJ?
So the date for September 30th was determined in July, right? Ish. It doesn't matter. Don't need to know the exact date. July
30.
So this is what we have to look forward to try to get a meeting with council, and the September 30th meeting was canceled already. So we have that point to make. And the other point to make is the last presentation that we had was in March. So it's not just an issue of let us know when you want to have a meeting, because we've been waiting months to have this meeting. And just now we are not allowed to have this meeting with council. So this is going to further push out into October, maybe. We don't know that. So I think that it was inappropriate to have canceled that meeting. I think it was premature, and it's contrary to what we have demonstrated as a goal with the Home Builders Association.
All right, well, I guess I have not heard that other counselors are concerned about this. It's my intent to not waste people's time with meetings that don't have topics. And we don't just have a carte blanche meeting to show up unprepared. So September 30th is 2 weeks out from today. And that's why we just this past week put some other items on that agenda, because we have other things that need to be discussed. And as soon as a topic is resolved with Home Builders Association, we can put that back on the agenda. But We do have many groups in the community that would like to get the council's attention, I'm sure, and so we need to have those topics prepared ahead of time and scheduled on the agenda. Any further discussion, council, on the agenda? DJ.
Sure. I think that's a paltry attempt to explain what's going on here. There's been no deadline established for when a topic needs. It's my understanding that the 9th of September was the last communication with Brad, which was late last week. So anyway, so if there's another agenda item I wanted to bring up, I went to an agenda setting meeting a couple weeks ago with the mayor. Rick was there, Joel was there, Vanessa was absent. The mayor stormed out of the meeting after having a conversation that likened to a meeting about the meeting that we were having on Wednesday. Stormed out of the meeting when we were talking about current agenda items. It was my intent that day to talk about Home Builders Association in the upcoming 9:30 meeting, and by storming out of the meeting, prohibited having any meaningful meeting about the agenda, the current agenda or the future agenda otherwise. Now, even though we had Rick Riker there, our vice president-elect, that in the absence of the mayor and in the absence of the council president can, assume duties thereof, those duties were not assumed, and Aaron was unwilling to have any conversation whatsoever about the agenda in the absence of the mayor. So there's two problems here. One problem is these agenda setting meetings are turning into meetings about meetings. What I witnessed in that room was basically just wanting to have a meeting to talk about stuff that's on our agenda, right? And we didn't necessarily have any conversation whatsoever about the current or future agenda. And then the mayor storms out and prohibits any conversation whatsoever about the agenda. So there's two problems right there. So Mayor, I'd recommend that you stick around for those meetings and you allow for the agenda to be discussed. And two, understand that these are agenda setting meetings. These are not scheduled meetings. These are not publicly noticed meetings. Now, never mind, they don't have to be because they don't have a quorum of counselors there. But the core of these meetings is to structure an agenda to get the most efficient way to do business on a piece of paper so that we can all understand what's ahead of us. So, yeah, there's those two issues that I just wanted to bring up to everybody's attention.
I didn't storm out of the meeting. I did leave the meeting, and I'll tell the council why, because the agenda setting meeting is, my understanding, a meeting between myself, the mayor, and the city manager, and we have the council president always invited to the meeting. We do have a council president and vice president this year, and then we have a council policy of inviting another rotating counselor to that meeting. So at this particular meeting, I had 3 counselors present, and one particular counselor who was our rotating council member did not, allow me to conduct the meeting and felt the need to dominate me, and I didn't feel the need to waste my time with that particular day, and so I left, and that's that. I think you all can see the relationship dynamic here. Go ahead, Brian.
I don't know if this is the appropriate venue for bringing up council drama, which is kind of what's happening right now. DJ has his impression of what happened in that situation. The mayor has their impression. I'm sure Rick and I'm sure everyone else in that room has their impression of what happened in that situation. At the end of the day, it's the mayor's agenda setting meeting with the city manager. When I attend those meetings as a counselor, I understand that I am there, mostly to observe and to provide, minimal comment as appropriate. It is not my role to go in there and assert myself and advocate for any certain position necessarily, which is my understanding of what happened. So I hope we can just leave it at that and move on.
All right, anything further for agenda review today? Valerie.
I just have a question, because I was hoping to get the information on the water treatment plant and the GMP, is that what it's called, maximum price, guaranteed maximum price. Where are we on that process? Is that going to happen by the end of the year, or has there been a slowdown? Because I know he wanted to get it, say, October, November. Jason's not here.
No, Jason's not here, but we still are on schedule for
Okay.
that. We have not been notified that we will not be able to provide that in the scheduled timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
Brian?
I had a question about, I noticed the lot next to the police station has been leveled and is being graded, and I'm wondering if we have an estimate of when that's going to be complete?
Yeah, we were originally talking to council about having it maybe mid-October available and open for our new resting area. I'd still like to stick to that date, although things are going very well, but I do not want to provide a date that's sooner than that and not be able to deliver on that date.
Okay, so when we make the decision to switch to that site, the resolution that's in the packet for Wednesday, we'll have to do an amendment to that, because that amendment has 2 sites listed, the 2 current sites and not the 3rd site. So we'll have to come back at it again and revise.
I'll look at the memo, the resolution, and we did revise that to include the sites. And if we do need to, we will need to also adopt a new resolution to include that site. We are currently working right now on getting the fencing completed, as mentioned, and that's the next step. We're doing some grading, et cetera, so things are progressing along very well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Rob?
So we constantly talk about the water treatment plant next spring and GMP and so forth. And then the big one that we don't talk about very often is the brick grant. So are we getting money, or are we going to be able to do this project, or what's up?
Yep, again, we're still in the queue, and we still have no new news to report on the brick grant. We're going through the process of working through the state and federal requirements and answering the questions that they have in order for us to ultimately close out and get it fully approved for our $50 million brick grant.
Anything further for agenda? All right, I think we need a motion to adjourn into executive session.
I make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting and go into a special meeting. Executive.
Thank you. Seconded by Rick. All in favor of moving into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.